Hi everybody! Today we're going to be talking about the DOM, or the Document Object Model. So as you may or may not remember, every web page is built upon this DOM. And what it means is that our pages are structured like a tree. We have one parent and possibly a few children, and the page, as you add more and more things, just gets deeper and deeper. Nodes have these different properties, methods, and events. So let me draw you a quick example, and then we'll talk about how we can use JavaScript to manipulate this DOM. So every web page is built like a tree. So we start up here, and we've got our document, and then you're going to have, hopefully you remember, your head and your body. All right. Well, what kind of things are in your web page? You might have a div, and another div. And in the third div, we're going to get more specific. We'll say, oh, well, this div has 3 paragraphs, and one of those paragraphs has the ID equals 3. So what does this mean? Why do we care that the page is built like a tree? This means that JavaScript can actually go in and it can look and say, you know what? I wanted to find the second div. Oh, I found this thing right here. Oh, I wanted to find the specific paragraph that had the ID equals 3. Oh, it's right here. Because JavaScript can find these different elements in your page, it can also change what we call the attributes of that page. So for instance, that paragraph might have a background color or a special kind of font. The paragraph also has text in it. How can we go in there and how can we change that text? So this is what we're going to be using JavaScript to do in this course. So again, we've got that the page content is represented by the DOM. The scripting language JavaScript uses the DOM to interact with the document. How does it do that, though? How does it know how to interact? Well, the JavaScript has something called an API, or an Application Programming Interface. You may have heard people talking about APIs in the past. Programmers tend to do that. They're like, oh, what API are you using, or what API are you using? And it can sound kind of intimidating if you've never used one before. An API is just a way for someone else to write code and then you to use it to interact with their programs. No matter which browser you're using, Firefox, Chrome, different things like that, and no matter which scripting language you're using, in our case we're going to use JavaScript, the API is always the same. The way you interact is always going to be the same. And this is really important because it's nice to know that if you learn this, you won't have to learn something different later on. So let's talk about some of these DOM objects, or elements as we call them. The first one, kind of the root of your entire page, is the document. So if you wanted to, you could find out what the document URL is, what the height of the document is, all the different links that are in the document background color. If there's an attribute that you've used to style your page, you can find it using JavaScript in the API. The next kind of concept we talk about is an element, or a node in the tree. If you remember, I drew that you can have the body, and inside the body you can have divs, paragraphs, links, list items. Each one of those is a node in the tree, and you can find it using the API. Sometimes, though, it can be a little bit more complicated than just returning a single element. What if you wanted to find all of the children of one particular ordered list or unordered list? Well, in that case, instead of returning a single element, sometimes it's returned a node list, or an array of elements. So for instance, there's this one API that we can use called document.getElementByTagName, and you can give it any element you want, so P or list item. Well, there's a really good chance that there's more than one paragraph in your page, so it would return all of them together. So this is how we're going to be using arrays later in the course, probably in about week 3, to help you understand how to deal with an overload of information. Finally, the important thing I need you to remember is that in the DOM there are attributes. So you have your elements, and every element probably has one or more attributes that go with it. So an image, for images, image element, it would have a source, it would have alt text, it would have width and a style, different things like that. So attributes are the kind of cool things that we want you to be able to change to make your page look different. Okay, so if you understand that the page is made up of documents and elements and attributes, I'm hoping this slide will make a little bit more sense. So if you have a document, you can say, you know what, I want to get a certain element using the ID. You can also say, oh, I've got this document, grab all the elements that happen to be a paragraph or a link. Now this one's new, this idea of element.innerHTML. So a paragraph is an element, And you assume that there's some sort of text inside that paragraph. Well, if you've been coding HTML or CSS, you probably might be thinking, when I use the paragraph tag, I never saw an inner HTML attribute. You wouldn't have. This is part of the API, but you can use this to change the content of any element. You can also change the element style, and you can even add additional attributes to any element that the DOM can grab. Finally, an interesting one that you may or may not use is you can even remove attributes. So if something has a certain color, you can go ahead and get rid of that if you want. I know that there was a lot I went over in this slide that maybe didn't make a lot of sense to you yet. That's okay. That's the point of this class, is so that at the end of this course you can go back to this slide and you can say, oh great, I've mastered this. I'm beginning to understand that learning JavaScript doesn't mean that I know how to code everything by hand. It means that I know that there's something called an API, and I know how I can use it to make my page a little bit better. So we're going to start slow, and the most important part to me is for you to feel comfortable searching for information on the web. I'll be able to teach you a little bit. I can show you some of the main methods and APIs and different things like that. But I want you to code with me and then make sure you go off and you try to change things just a little bit until your confidence is really up there. Good luck.